Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today on this episode we are heading back to Disneyland, looking at the refurbishments that happened to Peter Pan in California from the 80s and on. So we've currently already taken you through the outside facade, the queue. We have boarded a galleon. We have headed through the nursery, gone through the doors, and out the window into London Town. So we just started with London Town, and we're going to take you through the remainder of the attraction this evening. So with me to discover some inside fun facts about Peter Pan is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, yo, what up?
Hey, I'm really excited for this one, especially because there's a lot of photos of what this ride looks like with the lights on. So it's some things you don't usually see, and also some things that are actually quite surprising that they use as props and to make things look a certain way that you wouldn't expect. So really, really interesting. I also have a really fun trail off into some Disneyland history that we're going to get to as well. So excited for this one. So let's dive right in where we left off last time. We had just gone out the window of the nursery and we are in the garden headed into London. Like we're flying over London and the houses are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I showed you these kind of like fluorescently painted houses. And this is what they look like on the front side. And then on the back side, they are just painted matte black. But before we...
Matte black.
It's like Affleck, you know, that's like the...
That's why I can't not say it.
But before we fly over the city, I know that Kirk has some things to share with us about chimney pots, I believe. So buckle up, kids.
We ain't cooking, lady. We heading to rooftops. Yes, it's very funny because as the episode ended last week and I was staring off into, because we were doing the cathedral and trying to guess where the two towers were, and we just assumed that it was a continuation, but they segmented out the building. I kept looking at the houses and I'm like, okay, we've talked about half timber. We've talked about how many dormers do you need to know about? So I was like, what is something that we haven't discussed about architecture that is period specific? And I went right directly to the rooftops with these little tiny conical shapes that are above the chimneys, and those would be called chimney pots or chimney cones, but most of the time they were called chimney pots. So they serve a very, very important role if you had a home back in England, because particularly in Victorian and Edwardian London, which is similar time frame to Peter Pan, almost every house was heated by indoor coal fires. To keep the house from filling up with toxic smoke, a chimney needed a strong upward draft. The chimney pot essentially acts like a funnel, and by narrowing the opening at the very top of the chimney, it forces the smoke to move up faster as it escapes, pulling more air from the fireplace below. Also, because it is conical and it is smaller opening at the very top, it allows it to deflect wind a little bit better, especially if there's strong gusts and whatnot. They won't blow straight down like it would in an open chimney. So this is kind of like buffering some of that wind while also expelling out the toxic fumes that you would have in a London household.
So instead of having like a big open square, it just like keeps the wind out because it's smaller?
Yeah. So if you, follow the Home Sweep Local Chimney Sweep website, which is the localchimneysweep.co.uk, their guide to British chimney pots show us quite a few different styles. But yes, correct. It is protecting against weather, debris, animals, because little scurriers down from what would be just an open square. So if this was wide open as a rectangle or a square, it would not be as effective. You can see this one, this chimney pot actually has grating, so that little squirrels and animals and birds won't go nesting into your chimney,
Smart. Yeah.
So there you go. The old.
We don't really have those today, right? Like we have in the U.S.
Well, we also don't really use charcoal fires to heat our houses, so
That's true.
I'm pretty sure that's like there's Teslas on the street, Kate. I think we moved on.
Didn't they have like a big like coal issue, like a fog that settled over London once upon a time as well, that just like was a huge disaster?
I'm going to have to put a pin in that, as I have not done any toxic cloud residue information. But I would imagine, since everyone was using this, and coal is not exactly healthy, and it's going directly above, maybe foggy London is more smoky, sooty London. Was it in 1952, the Great Smog of London?
Yes. Yeah.
Let me get some pictures here. Look at this guy. Look at that Bobby.
Yeah. It was intense.
And here we go. This is a good one of some buildings and structures, especially considering we're about to go head into London town and you're going to see Big Ben.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah,
it's not fog, it's smog from all the coal, is my understanding. Terrible, terrible time in London. Let's go head into London, one that's not covered in coal smog. You can see from this wonderful layout that is from Park Lore, shout out to them, where we're headed. We went in through the nursery, then we flew out through the window, and then it says over the neighborhood, which is where we just went. And then we're going into what they call in Imagineering is London town. It says flight over London here. But I do have a Imagineering work copy from 1981. And we've been showing these in this series. So this was what it was in development in 1981. And by the time we get to 1983, they've actually changed it, because this is kind of them thinking they're likely going to copy Walt Disney World's version that was in 1971. That's when that one opened. They thought that they would just copy that version and put it in Disneyland, but they didn't actually end up doing that. They made a lot of changes. So for London town, the description is for the story. It says, as the ride vehicles follow Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, they climb higher and higher into the sky, and London slowly disappears from sight, lost beneath the gathering clouds of night. The set description is, model pieces duplicate an aerial view of London. The model pieces will be scaled to give the feeling of ascent. The Thames River is painted directly on the concrete flooring. In show functions, it says, this scene brings to life the exhilarating feeling of beginning an adventure with Peter Pan. And it lists like the audio is the chimes of the clock tower, traffic horns and noise, and the background music and song is You Can Fly, which we did end up getting. And then they talk about the projection and lighting effects. They say there's a traffic effect, a moon effect, UV lighting, which is black light, and then a high pressure fog curtain, which I thought was really interesting, Kirk, because I was like, high pressure fog curtain? I don't think that's something we ever got.
No, that never existed.
No. So I looked up what it is, and it basically is like a sheet of fog that comes down. And I was like, there's probably two places they would use this in the scene, is either flying into London, like, as you're going into it, or potentially flying out of London towards the second star to the right into Neverland. That seems like it would make most
I would probably
sense.
Put it there for a transition, because there's so many colors in that scene. Think about our focal point. Our focal point is a lot closer and the homes, and then we get the large expanse. If you add that cloud layer there, you wouldn't really get that great transition. But going from like pitch black to very colorful with that fog would have been pretty impactful. I'm trying to think of the only time I've seen this exact feature used, and they actually do a projection on it. I mean, I guess technically they do it doesn't your Disneyland Pirates use a propulsion fog one, and they put
it
Barbossa
hasn't been there
on
in
it?
a long time. I haven't seen it in ages,
Okay.
but yes.
So that was one time in Disney. One that's still functioning now, although it doesn't function in the correct way, is in Universal's Islands of Adventure here in Orlando. In the Forbidden Journey attraction, they use a forced fog and they project like a skeleton face on it. But it was actually a really cool effect when the cameras were working, because the Dementor right before the Dementor scene, they take a photo of you, and then the Dementor is supposed to like suck your soul out. And then in that projection, or in that fogged curtain, they would project your face being like removed from your body, like almost like spiritual, just like in the films when the Dementors are giving you the kiss or whatever they're doing.
I don't think they're making out with you. Just saying.
Now I shall give you a kiss.
You're like sucking out your soul or something like that. It's not very romantic.
Yeah. Whatever,
But yeah, I think that this was an interesting idea that they had, and they probably just nixed it for budget, or, it didn't make sense or whatever. Because instead, when you fly into Neverland, which we'll get to in a minute, you basically go around a corner. And so it's a blind corner instead. So you're not going to see where you're going. That being said, the other things that are in this work copy, they have some pictures from the movie just to kind of give inspiration for what they're going for. So we see Peter Pan with the Darling Children flying over the Tower Bridge. And then we see them flying in front of Big Ben as well, just all stills from the movie. This is what this scene looks like as you're flying into it. This is what we see is kind of some clouds in the distance. And this is what we currently see with the River Thames, animated water and whatnot, and the Tower Bridge. But I wanted to show you what it looks like with the lights on, because it's just really different. Okay, so the clouds, I think, are a combination of like wire mesh, kind of like in the 50s, that are hung and suspended in the air. But the ones on the ground that you see that are kind of like foggy, they're actually just plastic garbage bags.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally clear plastic garbage bags that I'm pretty sure are just obscuring the mechanical work for the traffic, whatever is like allowing the traffic to move back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Kirk, if you have details about how that effect works or not.
We had actually talked about it in our previous episode and shown into the mechanisms, but yeah, it's that bike chain with UV light. So there's no actual moving vehicles. It's just literally painted dots on a bike chain that just continuously is always moving and rotating.
Right. So that's what you see is the garbage bags are basically just laid on top of the mechanism that pulls those traffic chains back and forth. I was like, a friend of mine actually did tell me that that's what they used here. And they said shopping bags, but I looked at this closer. I'm like, this looks like just garbage bags, like that they got from maintenance.
Look like a thicker material than your standard, what you would go shopping with, like the plastic bags that are the throwaway ones. These seem to be just a little bit thicker.
This is what the Tower Bridge looks like close up, and you can see all of the neighborhoods and everything. It's just all black light paint just painted on the floor because it is flat, as you can see here. And then another view of the Tower Bridge. This is the older version before they used the animated water in the Thames. And you can see, I'm pretty sure the shadow from the Tower Bridge is actually painted on a concrete river, because that doesn't look like it would be throwing a shadow in that picture.
Right.
But it is just painted concrete at this point, and then they added more water effects later. But this is what the Tower Bridge looks like with the lights completely on. It's amazing how much this scene, I think it's one of the most beautiful scenes in a Disney attraction, is this flying over London scene and flying over Neverland, and how simple it really is, when you look at it with the lights on. It's crazy, Kirk.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
We also have Nelson's monument, which, if you remember, was in the 1955 version. And my understanding from WDI is that is actually the same guy on the top. They took him and they put him in this one. So he is not the one from 1955. He's still here. And cool. Like Nana was. Then we have Big Ben, which is the same as Walt Disney World and the previous Disneyland version. It's got the tapered bottom to it. So we've already talked about Big Ben a lot, so I'm not going to go revisit that. But there is some interesting things on the face of this clock, Kirk. The time is 8:04, but has changed over time because I've actually seen it be different times. And then there's also, in Disneyland's version only, there is a little hidden Mickey that is in the upper window of just one of the sides. And he's like a full figure hidden Mickey. He's not like a little face. It's not like three circles. It's literally a full figure of Mickey.
It's great hidden Mickey.
Yeah, he's really cute.
People always ask me about the Walt Disney World one, if we have one. He's not there.
Nope. Just in Disneyland. Yeah, so in 2015, they did add the Darling Children and Peter Pan landing on the hands of the clock, just like they do in the film, which I think is quite a fun effect. And honestly, I didn't even notice that this happened. Maybe I didn't pay close enough attention because I was just looking at everything that was in the scene. But they do have that, and it's only on one of the sides. So pay attention to the clock if you're in Disneyland, because they do have that special feature on it. But, and then you can see another picture of a great picture of that trash bag on the floor next to Big Ben. It's almost like torn. It's like,
crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. This is what it looks like with the lights on completely, just for another view of it. In 2015, they did add that water effect on the Thames River. We'll see this throughout the entire attraction, that they added an animated water effect. Do you have any more information about that, Kirk?
So one of the major enhancements was a partnership with Panasonic in particular, because that led to a new level of high definition projectors all across the parks in a multitude of different experiences in the way that they utilize them. They use projections a lot. And it's an affordable way, but it's also a really dynamic way because it's hard to do a lot of practical effects, and projections can actually bring practical physical sets to life without needing mechanical animation. So there was a really, for Disneyland 60th, there was an actual collaboration with Panasonic to bring a lot of lasers and projections into a lot of the rides. They called, Panasonic officially called this official projection technology for both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. So Panasonic does all the projectors. The laser projectors that they're using now are replacing any of the old school ones that used lamps. We know when projections go down in attractions and there's like obviously like a bulb missing, and it's a nightmare, honestly, because they're running them consistently, constantly, and they run really hot. So the laser ones can now run cool, can be mounted in like weird angles, like pointing straight down, and they can run for over 20,000 hours with almost zero maintenance. And they also do really well in dark rides because anytime that there's a lack of light, these things really shine. So some of the projectors that they started to utilize is a low budget one. And a lot of if you're a nerd like me, look at the ceilings a lot of times because you'll see projection effects. You know, Mickey and Minnie's probably does the worst job of it because that whole entire ride is basically projections, laser projections.
Yeah.
So you need to look around you. And it's so funny because like you don't really think of projectors using lasers to show the images, but that's how they get to be so high definition. So this is a really simple one that is called the PTRZ570BU projector by Panasonic. It's only $3,700, which for a theme park of Disney scope and scale, this is pretty dang affordable, especially if it's going to last for 20,000 plus hours consistently and run cool. So the maintenance on it is relatively low. They also don't require 50,000 lumen big chips like they do for some of the other attractions. We'll talk about a different type of laser for something that they would use for Cinderella Castle or something like Navi River Journey. These smaller ones only need like a 5,000 lumen laser. But speaking of the really cool ones, and this is something that you would see on like a Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, these ones are not cheap. If you go to B&H, this will cost you 227 grand.
Oh my gosh.
This is a 50,000 lumen laser. This is what you're seeing on the castle, like Cinderella Castle. So to do the lighting package for that, it is quite intense and quite an expense, but it does bring the castle to life in a pretty magical way. So
Yeah.
The power of lasers and laser projections. I'm so stupid. I thought we were still using like old school, you know, the regular bulb style ones for all of these things. I had no idea that they even had laser projections until I dove into this.
Yeah.
But that's what we're going to see in Peter Pan, particularly to give animation towards the River Thames. We're going to see it for a lava flow. We'll see it for all of the ocean water surrounding Neverland, as well as the water that Tiger Lily's in. All of that now has animation, and it's all done with laser projection. One of the things that they did to really bring things to light was that UV light. And I'm just kind of a nerd, and I don't know how UV light works in terms of being able to like work with paint. So UV paint or fluorescent paint works by absorbing invisible ultraviolet light from a black light and then immediately re-emitting it as a visible light. And these specialized pigments in the paint convert short wavelength UV radiation into longer wavelength visible light, creating a bright glowing effect in the dark. So it's not the same as glow in the dark. I know that might sound confusing.
Yeah.
That's phosphorescent, in which it stores light. Like, you know, when you're a kid, you have something and you hold it up to a light and then you go in the dark and it's all green.
You're right.
You know, that's the one that's like storing it. The fluorescent UV light consistently needs a black light source. Otherwise, it will not glow because think of it like almost like a mirror where it's re-emitting and changing the wavelength of the light so that you can see it. And it gives it that like really cool glow. It's like super low tech, but really fancy. Now, if you're like me and you read Paint and Coatings Industries newsletter, then you'll know that the industry standard for Disneyland is PPG. And PPG is the official paint of both Walt Disney World and Disneyland. Officially, they got listed this on June 9th, 2022 for a multi-year agreement to exclusively use their paints for everything, both UV and mainly exterior. For UV applications, they would use the PPG PSX 700 series. And for stuff like painting the castle, like we just had in Walt Disney World, they use a lot of times something like this exterior paint, which contains AcryShield Max exterior latex paint. Semi-gloss eggshell.
What is AcryShield Max? Is it protective? Like it's super
I don't know.
tough?
It's some nonsense. Oh, hang on. I got you. Hang on. Let me read the product detail. I was going to say it's some nonsense to sell more paint. AcryShield Max exterior is a premium quality urethane modified exterior house paint. This advanced formula can be used in both normal and marginal above freezing conditions when the low temperature cure is required to form the proper film. Excellent paint. This is
that must mean something to paint people, you know?
Yes, it does mean something to paint people. The other thing that we notice here, and we're going to see it in other scenes a little bit more, but another lighting package fixture is going to be fiber optics. We're going to see fiber optic lighting quite a bit. And I love that Kate had showed some like really cool behind the scenes. You're going to see a lot more in Neverland coming up. But, you know, twinkling star fields, in particular in that Neverland scene coming up, are going to be utilized. And some parts of this scene in London town utilize fiber optics as well for lighting package. But it contains three main components: the illuminator, the color/twinkle wheel, and the fiber harness. What we're looking at here is the fiber harness, which contains a plastic coating, the cladding, the core, and the light ray in which it comes out. Now, you probably, if you were a kid, you remember something like this.
Yeah.
Which I think shows you the components really well, because the illuminator or the light box is over here at the very top, and then the color and twinkle wheel, and then the fiber harness, which is this bundle of fibers. And this kind of gives you an idea of, I guess these are like ones that like kids can run around with, and it's like sensory ones. But I just thought it was like cool because they were exposed, because a lot of times they aren't. So I mean, that's what I do. So that's it.
It's real footage of Kirk.
These aren't cheap either. They're like $1,000 for like some of these fiber optic packages. And I wouldn't be remiss with talking about things with the lights on. And I'm going to just show you real quick a picture. We're going into this in a section, but I just wanted to show you what the fiber optic look like here. So the light emitter boxes are going to be on the bottom, and then these like snaking that pop out. This was the best picture because there were so many of them. Where in London town, they're at the street level, so they're not like exposed and in the air.
Yeah.
But this reminded me so much of a scene in the Haunted Mansion. Even though it's not fiber optics, it is the eyes. So if you've never seen this before in the Haunted Mansion, it's like, it looks like a bunch of spiders or snakes. And this is just like when you go through the wallpaper scene and the eyes are blinking, they're literally just boxes, light boxes that have a shutter effect to them.
Yeah, that's in Disney World's
like
version,
snakes.
Not Disneyland, just to be clear. But yeah, they're so cool looking. We're going to head into Neverland in just a minute and see some more of those stars and whatnot. But before we do, I just want to point out a few other things that are in London town before we fly into Neverland past the second star on the right. So one interesting thing about this scene is you'll notice against the walls, those are just mirrors. So to make the city and the room feel way bigger than it is, there's mirrors everywhere in this room. And I don't know if people notice that, but you can see it also here in this one with the lights on. The mirrors are on the right-hand side there. I don't know if this is projected or illuminated, but there's definitely a moon in the sky as well. And I feel like I think
that's illuminated because the projection is Peter and them flying by it.
Do they have that in Disneyland?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's only in Disney World. You've watched it
Really?
a million times recently. I always thought only Disney World had the characters flying by it because we
Oh,
have
okay.
something else in Disneyland. Maybe it used to be that way. I'm going to have to look that up. Yeah, Disney World has like the spinning moon with the children that are on it. But Disneyland has the second star to the right projection that was added in 2015, which you can see here. And there's some closer up pictures of what it looks like, and it is actually animated and whatnot. But it's interesting that, to me, I don't know, Kirk, this is really pretty. It's very pretty, and I'm not against it. And it does have stars involved.
Hot take coming in.
But it looks so like sci-fi versus fantasy to me. Something about it, like I think they try to incorporate elements of the Neverland scene in it. They have rainbow arches that are in it.
Yeah.
And they do have all the stars and whatnot. But you remember the 1955 version had just like large stars that then, you know, that would like signal your transition into it. This, to me, every time I see this, it feels very out of place in this attraction. That's the only upgrade that they made that I'm kind of like, I just don't know if this feels like Peter Pan.
I would be okay with it if they ended up putting it on that curtain, like if they did a fog curtain with that and it was larger, because it's very tiny and it looks high def but out of place because we're not actually going into it, because the way that our galleons float by, we actually steer to the left like real quick. If we would go through that and it was like almost like not like a wormhole, but I don't know how else to explain it because you're like literally going straight into it. That would make more sense to me and maybe impactful storytelling versus like I'm watching some sort of cosmos galaxy to the right as I pass by.
Right. It's exactly that. It's like,
yeah.
And the style doesn't come, I understand that they pulled elements from the next scene and whatnot, but the style itself doesn't come from the film that I know of. I think that there is a better way, and I like your idea of doing like the high pressure fog curtain and then projecting something onto that. That would be really cool because and very effective. But I agree. It's kind of like you're just seeing something happening in space and then you're flying by it. And it's a little bit different. So just my opinion. It's okay if you guys love it, but
it's a valid opinion. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people have thought the same.
I think they did a really wonderful job with most of the additions in 2015. This one in particular, I'm always like, I don't know if I like that. So anyway. Let's move on. You can see now on our layout, we have turned this corner past the second star to the right, and this is that blind corner to now transition into Neverland. So you see some stars start appearing as we fly into this scene. Now, I want to point out here, we mentioned this in one of our like concept episodes, but this is what it was like in 1981 when they were thinking they were still going to do a version of the 1971 Walt Disney World one and put it in Disneyland, because you'll notice there isn't a flyover of the island like there was in 1955 and like we have today. This is what they had planned to do. So they were going to have an Indian village and Neverland, pirate ship, the Lost Boys camp and treehouse, Mermaid Lagoon. So it looks very similar to what we have in Florida. So I'm not really sure why they ended up changing it back to just the flyover the island. It could have been lack of space, nostalgia, like wanting to not completely replace what people knew and loved in the original attraction. Money, it could be a lot of things, budget. But I do have this original model that I think this is implementing what we just saw on that layout, because this model, if you notice, we do have like the London town scene and then it flies into Neverland, but it's definitely, there's an island involved, but there's a couple other scenes in there as well. So I wonder if this model in particular was this particular version before they changed it into something else. So this was on display, I believe, in One Man Stream for a while, way back when. You know, an interesting thing that they decided not to go that direction, you know?
As somebody who is forced to go through the Walt Disney World edition, I can tell you, we don't have a better one. The island flyover is so majestic and beautiful. And I was gobsmacked is the only word I can come up with when I did it the first time. I had no idea it was going to be like that.
Yeah. Disneyland's, I think, is the superior version of this area. Even though it doesn't have all the different scenes that you're flying through, there's something so beautiful about being in the stars and then flying over this island and seeing all the things below. So that being said, so this is what it looked like in the 1960s, just to give you a reminder. And then this is what they ended up getting for 1983. So this is what the Imagineering work copy says. And I'm just going to read the one for Pirate Cove because it has all of those other scenes that it was going to include, but I'll go over those later when we get to those scenes where they actually ended up putting them in this attraction. But this is for Pirate Cove, and it says, far below the Indian village on the other side of the mountain, a pirate ship lies anchored in a small bay. Aside the ship, ominously patrolling the waters in search of its next meal, is a hungry crocodile. If you look at this picture that has kind of the lights on of the 1983 version, there is two little tiny green triangles in the water that I think are the eyes of the TikTok croc next to the ship.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they eliminated those when they animated the water, but we'll take a look at that in a second. But the set description for this was, this will be a dimensional set. A small pirate ship appears anchored in the back bay of the island. Beside the ship, a tiny crocodile waits with an ominous appetite. So then you can see what the Pirate Cove looked like here, but basically they kept the original design of the flyover the island like in 1955, except they did add, some extra star effects around the room. They definitely plussed the model a little bit from the original, but here's more what those lights look like that Kirk was pointing out, how those stars are actually affixed, which is so interesting, Kirk, because I think in my brain, I always thought that they were just on like some giant mesh things that they like affix the lights to, but that's not really what this is,
Yeah.
I said they look kind of like spaghetti coming out of the wall.
Spaghetti sticking out, yeah.
Yeah.
With like little eyeballs. It's like all these little tendrils.
Yeah, which is so fascinating how they achieve that effect because it's so convincing when you're in it, Yeah,
because they're spatially floating.
Yeah.
The visual of it is that they're just hanging midair.
Yeah.
And you would never see it because unless the lights were on or you see a picture like Kate showing.
Right, exactly. So this is another view of kind of what Kirk showed you guys earlier with the lights that are coming up from the floor as well. But just fascinating how they achieve that effect. But this is what the Pirate Cove looked like once they added the animated water effects. And if there's a TikTok croc in the water, I can't really see it from this picture, but you do see like them shooting a cannon, which is kind of fun. That is there, and the water coming down from the mountain as well. So this is another view of what it looks like with the animated water.
It is gorgeous. I cannot state this enough. I am not a big Peter Pan person at Disney World. I am the biggest fan in Disneyland because these projections are so convincing, but it's just, your senses get overwhelmed because the way that it's captured, you're in space and time around the island because you're never like consuming necessarily like over it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm used to being like on the island, but in this, we're almost just like flying around and like surveying all the different larger features of the topography. And I think that is what makes it more impactful, but it's so brilliant. It's almost like somebody took the saturation of this entire scene and dialed it to 100. And it just is, it's really, really, really pretty. Like it's like a painting that came to life or an animation cell that came to life.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most beautiful scenes they've ever created in a dark ride in Disney history, is this
Agreed.
one. And I also have a note from our friend Joshua L. Harris, who's another Disney historian who's in our chat, who says that looks identical. The lights effect looks identical to the back of the corridor scene in the Hollywood Tower Hotel from the Tower of Terror, which is really interesting. So thanks for sharing that. So a couple of the other things we have in this scene, one is the volcano. Now this has changed its effect over time because you are looking at here, this is the 1983 version, and we actually see fog rising from volcano to make it into like smoke, right? It's like smoking. And that's not something that we have today. They changed this effect over time so that instead it has like lava flowing down the side. Do you have any information about how they do this, Kirk?
I don't. I assumed it was just, again, laser projection because that's what it looked like in terms of movement, but there might be like a rotating wheel inside with light.
It is, yeah. If you look down from the top, it's a rotating wheel that makes it look that way. But there is no fog effect, but it is very effective. So definitely looks like lava flowing for sure. And this is what it looks like with the lights on. So you can still see the light is lit up there, but it's somewhat less impressive with the lights on. Oh, and this is them installing that new effect specifically in 2015 in the upgrades as well. Then I wanted to show kind of what it looked like before they added that projected water effect, just kind of a close-up of the water. It's definitely not nearly as impressive. So this is what it looked like before they added that enhanced effect. And it's still pretty. It's still gorgeous, but it is a little bit different than what they have today, which is this beautiful blue water that's flowing down the side of this mountain. They also have, this is what the Indian camp looks like. It's very similar to the one that we had in the 1960s and better than the one that was in 1955. But it's still out on that outcropping just like it was before. Just as a reminder, this is what it looked like in 1960s. So they really kept it very, very similar to that and didn't change it too much. The other thing we see here is this beautiful rainbow. And this is a throwback to the 1954 Herb Ryman concept that had a rainbow that they added into the design of the attraction. And then they have this one here as on Neverland as well, which is really just gorgeous with the lights off. Somewhat less impressive with the lights on, but still pretty nonetheless. The other thing we have to talk about in this room is something you used to be able to see with the lights on and only with the lights on. And it was something that became a little bit of Disney lore for quite a while. And that was in the corner when somebody scrolled "Bill sucks" on the exposed wood in the corner. Now, this was
Feel bad for Bill.
I don't know if it was like a manager or a supervisor. Somebody was really upset with Bill and decided to leave this little signature about it in the corner. Now, my understanding is it has since been painted, removed. It is no longer there. But for a good long while in the Neverland scene, you could see Bill sucks.
Just to let you know, he still sucks.
He still sucks.
They can erase it, but you can't erase that guy's attitude.
But yeah, that's a little Disney tea that's been around for a good long while. So, okay, before we go any further, we have to take a quick little break to talk about some things we got going on at Walrus Carp and Disney Sister-Owned. So, Kirk, what you got going on over there these days?
Big news. Mode is still crushing it. We're at about 4,300 users now. Like, I feel like every week we're gaining anywhere between 300 to 700 users on the app.
Awesome.
For something that's relatively new. We have some big feature changes coming up. Number one, when you hear this episode, the app is now on Android. So you can download it on the Google Play Store, as well as the iPhone store, as well, the Apple Store. And to get started, it's completely free. Mode is, think of it this way. If you want to become the hero of your story in the parks, you want to be able to find all the food, when rides go down, when are they coming back up, all the wait times, crowd calendars, find, and plan. There's a whole entire comprehensive planning. And we just did a major improvement. There's now a new POI button that will open up all locations for bathrooms, water fountain, first aid, baby care centers, and fuel rod locations. Now, remember, this is just for Florida now. However, we do have regions, and you'll notice this little region button that's over there on the right-hand side. We're adding California. So our friends who love this Disneyland version, you will see Disneyland, Disney's California Adventure, and Universal Studios Hollywood by our plan is June of 2026. So this year. So it's very, very exciting. We've added a lot new features. There's a couple of tweaks and changes, particularly crowd calendars. You can now see 12 months. And when you are in planning, you can actually see what the crowd levels are projected to be per park per day as you're doing your planning, which these are all things that don't exist anywhere else besides Mode. That's MOWD on any of the app stores. So yeah, become the hero of your theme park story.
I love the feature too, where it's like it can kind of predict when rides might come back up, so you can kind of
the number
stalk
one,
the
dude.
attraction. So great.
It's once you get, so like it's 70% accurate, and it's based on like rooted data of past downages, and we use kind of a complex mathematical to hone in a range and then hone in a probably most likely. But that range is 70% accurate, and once you get used to mode and how it works, you can be pretty dang good at knowing we should skip this for now, come back like roughly around this time period in the range, and we probably will nail it or get close. And that comes with, just by looking at the ranges and times. It's also like really helpful if you're on test track closes, the average downage on test track is like 15 minutes, right? So most people, if you waited that long, you waited an hour and a half, you don't know when it's coming back up. Rather than like having this argument with your group, you could just open up mode and go, well, it's probably coming up in 15 minutes. I say we give it a half an hour, and if it doesn't, then we can dip. Right. But like at least now you can make an informed decision, where before you were making an emotional or a time constraint or an argument to make the decision to move forward. So
it's a fantastic resource to have. I love that.
Yeah.
I can't wait till it comes to Disneyland in particular. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah. I think California, because particularly with California, there are so many fun food festivals.
Yeah.
That's another thing on the dining tab now. We differentiate, like, for example, if you're in Epcot, it'll differentiate between regular dining and festival dining. So it shows Flower and Garden POIs now, and you'll see that for Mardi Gras over at Universal. But we'll do that obviously with all the DCA. Like Chinese New Year has their own kiosks and overlays. So I'm looking forward to that because I know food changes a lot in California because it's a locals park. And I think that's going to be a really premium feature outside of the estimated reopening times. But the app is crushing and people really love it. And it's something that doesn't exist. So it fills a void, and you can get started for free on either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store now. Just type in MOWD.
Awesome. Congrats, Kirk. That's
you.
amazing.
Thank you. Kate, what are you doing that's amazing? I know you've got a lot of projects going on. You write too many books, and I love it.
Well, it's been a little while since I've talked about the fact that I also write fiction stories. I've been talking a lot of my nonfiction work, Disney history books, but I actually have an entire fiction series that's called the Pixie Dust in the Park series. And there's one that is set in Disneyland that's called Where the Fireflies Dance. So it's kind of a romantic suspense tale that follows two Disney history live streamers who are obsessed with Disney history in the park and their romance and whatnot. But there's some suspense in there too. I don't want to give too much away of the story, but it was a really fun book for me to write. It was my first fiction book that I ever wrote. And then there's an entire series. So there's What the Mansion I See, which is set in Walt Disney World. It has kind of a haunted mansion theme. And then there is Who the Mirror Reflects, which is one that has two cast members instead of live streamers. So that one's a real fun one as well. But all of these books are available at disneycicerone.com. And I do narrate the audio for all of these, so if you prefer to listen to them in audiobook form. But I am running a bit of a special because I am a woman entrepreneur and an author, so I'm celebrating Women's History Month this month. And to honor the legacy of women Imagineers and animators in Disney history, you can use the code DisneyWomen, all lowercase, for $5 off your order in my bookstore at disneycicerone.com. So you can get bundles, audiobooks, signed copies, anything you like are all available there. So let's hop back into Peter Pan. I forgot to mention that we see this little teeny tiny Skull Rock that's also in this scene as we fly forward, which is going to be relevant because that's what we're flying toward is Skull Rock. So we see in the layout here, you can see we're going to go down this descent into Skull Rock. So we're actually flying down. You can feel your ship going downwards because now we're getting closer and closer to it. And that's why it becomes larger towards us. So the 1981 Imagineering work copy is kind of calls the scene pirate ship, but it also describes Skull Rock. So I just put it here. So it says, suddenly a dark and foreboding rock shaped like a skull appears directly in front of the ride vehicles. Instead of trying to avoid the Skull Rock, the ride vehicles pass directly through one of the eye sockets. On the other side is Captain Hook's pirate ship. Ugly old pirates of a mean and wicked disposition sway about the ship, softly singing a wicked pirate tune. The set description is vehicles enter through the eye of Skull Rock, which serves as the gateway to the pirate ship set. A sail drapes the stern of the ship to block the guest's sightline. And then for show functions, it says this scene sets the stage for the beginning of an adventure aboard a pirate ship. So this is how we are flying now into this. You can see that there's some flats on either side that kind of show almost like a cave or stalactites and stalagmites. And I really like this one as well because you can see that some of them actually are painted red, which I didn't even know there was anything there, quite honestly. But these flats have like red painting on them to make them look more like rocks. And then we're flying towards Skull Rock. Now, we don't go through the eye socket. That is what they did in the 1955 version. But instead, we do more like Walt Disney World, where we just fly towards Skull Rock. And we don't go through any eye sockets in this version at all. And there's no bird in the eye, Kirk, like there is in Walt Disney World. Yeah, that's disappointing. Yeah, no bird at all.
We need a Diablo-style crow immediately.
This is Tiger Lily in her original version in 1983, tied up, and you can just see they just have painted water that's around her. And she has a very different outfit here where her shoulders are exposed, and her feather is more of a teal and a purple color, but she is tied to, what is it, like a pier, a stump, a tree? She's tied to something.
I would say a stump, yeah.
A stump,
like
yeah.
Tree. Yeah, a pole.
A pole? Yeah, sure.
Because isn't it, it's like a pylon that's like embedded, and then the water rises, you know?
Right. So she's not like floating.
Submerged initially. Right. Correct.
Right. So that, because the water's going to come up and then drown her, right? That's the storytelling. But
that's you're sick and twisted. What's wrong with you? That's what you want?
No, I don't want that. That's just what...
Oh, sorry. I didn't.
That's the story.
I know. I'm kidding.
This is what they updated her to look like in 2015. So they basically just added, she no longer has shoulders exposed. She has more of a traditional outfit. And they changed her expression ever so slightly, and the feather in her hair is more like white and red instead of teal. But they added all that animated water at the bottom, which actually makes it feel more menacing that she might actually drown, which I think is interesting.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of the English idiom, a feather in your cap.
Yeah.
You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's this is derived from the custom that in some cultures, the warriors would add a new feather to their headgear for every enemy slain, or in the other case, be establishing some sort of success as a hunter, or being the first to bag some sort of game bird, or plucking off the feathers of prey and placing them in their hat band. Today, the phrase is more altered to be like a peaceful allusion to where somebody had a notable or laudable achievement or success. Examples that you have right here, his name is Crow's Heart. He was a Mandan, which is his tribal name, or his tribe, medicine man. These guys were mainly in North and South Dakota, and they would typically wear them based on the killing of enemy combatants, which makes me wonder as to why does Tiger Lily have two feathers in her hat? Did she kill two people?
Does she have two? Oh, she had one.
Hang on, go back to Tiger Lily.
I think she's got one.
I think she has two.
I think it's one.
Well, did she kill somebody?
Maybe she killed an animal? Because you said animals?
Maybe.
It could be animals?
It could be animal. Could be animal, yeah.
But that's
again, like if
yeah? Maybe?
She's got blood on her hands. That's all I'm going to say.
She's fierce. Yeah.
She is fierce.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. And we'll see it later on when we talk about hats and putting feathers in caps for real.
Okay.
That would be more of like hunting in Scotland and Wales. The first person who would kill a woodcock would pluck out the feather and stick it in their cap. So it'd be like the first person who successfully killed one of these birds. They kind of look like sandpipers.
Huh. Interesting. Now we're going to fly into the area that has the bow of the ship, not the stern. That will come up later because they have bifurcated, fancy word, this ship scene into two so that we only see one half of the ship at once, just like they did in the 1971 Walt Disney World version. So this scene essentially is imported from Walt Disney World, but it's not identical to it. So we'll get into that. But I do have from the 1981 Imagineering work copy, it says kids tied to the mast, and the description of it is Captain Hook has managed to capture John and Michael in The Lost Boys. He stands at the bow of his ship, sword in hand, demanding to know, where does Pan live? If you don't tell me, you'll all go overboard. Now, that's not what we see in this scene. We do have the kids tied to the mast.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit weird for Captain Hook to just scream at Peter Pan, where do you live, bro?
Because Peter Pan wouldn't have been in the scene then, and they needed to stick him in the scene. So they're like, well, we'll just do away with that. But we do have kids tied to the mast. So this is what it looks like flying into the scene. We see Captain Hook and Peter Pan up on the bow of the ship instead of up on the mast like it was in Walt Disney World. So they're in the same fighting position. I think they probably use the same molds and same manufacturing of them. But instead of putting them up on the mast, they now have put them on the bow. And you can see the kids that are tied to the mast there as well. Interestingly enough, Captain Hook's hook is also in the incorrect hand. It should be in the other side, should be in the left hand, and it's in the right in this one. So Captain Hook's got the wrong hook. I also have from the 1981 work copy, we have Wendy walking the plank. It says, since Hook was not able to force the secret of Pan's hiding place from anyone, Wendy is made to walk the plank. She stands near the end of the plank, shaking and frightened, her hands tied behind her back, which is what we see here. And again, Wendy is the only character in this entire attraction that has real fabric clothing. Everybody else has like painted clothing. But she is standing there looking terrified. It's also something that's in the Walt Disney World version, so it's just pretty much identical to that. We also see Smee, who's hanging out there looking at Wendy. And then it says Peter Pan and Captain Hook dueling from the 1981 guide. It says, as the ride vehicles move past the giant sail, Peter Pan is discovered engaged in a swirling flash of crossed blades as he duels to the finish with Captain Hook. And the set description is actually the stern of the pirate ship, not the bow. So they switched that pirate ship around like we had seen in the layout. It says, this scene is a climax of the adventure aboard the pirate ship. The interesting part, Kirk, is you remember how we talked about all the pirates that were on the ship last time and we named them all?
There's a lot less of pirates.
Yeah, there's only Smee and Turk are the only ones that exist here. Where are all the rest of the pirates?
I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah. So according to the 1981 guide, we were supposed to have a whole bunch of different pirates. We were supposed to have, like Walt Disney World, Skylight, Mullins, Starkey, Jukes, and Turk. And they even put them, ironically, they put them in the work copy here, but they got their names wrong. They listed it here at Turk. This is actually a picture of Starkey. So they got the character completely wrong because Turk looks like this. So Turk does not look like this guy. That's actually Starkey. And then they said, so Starkey looks like this. They said, this guy is Skylight, but Skylight is the one who's playing the concertina like up in the rafters. That's why he's called Skylight. So this is Bill Jukes, but they misnamed him Skylight. And then they got Mullins right. So, 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3 they got, but that is Mullins and they did get him correct. But I just thought that was really interesting. Smee and Turk were the only pirates we got here. So I don't know if this is budget and they're just like, or we just don't need all these pirates or whatever. We do hear them singing. So like there is pirate singing that is happening here, but we don't see any pirates. So who's singing? I don't know. Like is Smee and Turk having a serenade? I'm not quite sure. Are they down below? Because there's a light that, you can see the grating where the pirates might be down below in the ship.
Yeah,
and
maybe they're having getting into that rum.
But it's really interesting that like they just eliminated all the pirates from it. I think is really weird, Yeah,
I think that's strange as well.
This is another close-up of Peter Pan. They did say that they added more animation to Peter Pan and Hook in the 2015 refurbishment. I don't know if you saw any of that, Kirk, that it increased their animation.
Yeah, so Peter goes like this with his little dagger, and Captain Hook has his arm and elbow on a hinge, so it kind of just goes like this, like almost like an accordion. It just kind of pops out and then goes back in.
He's stabbing.
So they're both stabbing towards each other.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that nobody thought to put his hook on his correct hand when they did all of this. I guess. Yeah. I mean, but for staging, like they probably got it wrong for Walt Disney World, but in order to correct it, they would have to make new molds and whatnot. So they're just like, whatever,
whatever.
nobody cares and nobody notices and it goes by really fast. So it's fine. So,
But not here.
yeah. Here we see it. Here's also a close up of Smee next to that cannon. He has a tiny, tiny little dagger in his hands, which I always wondered what he was holding, but it's like the world's smallest dagger.
It's very precious to him, too, the way he's handling it.
Yes. And then we have the TikTok croc that's down in the water, who he opens and closes his mouth. So it's kind of limited animation of just doing that, which is also kind of a throwback to the 1955 version of the TikTok croc being around. But he's not like lunging at you and menacing towards you, rather just kind of waiting for Captain Hook to be his snack.
So the two things that I want to cover off are some historical, interesting decisions. So when we look at Hook, he is holding a very interesting style of sword. It's called a rapier, or in the production notes, they specifically call it a fencing sword. It has a bell style hilt, which you could actually hold it kind of like this, or you could hold it and grip from the top as well, which is kind of interesting, but it does protect your hand. That's the reason why that hilt was shaped like that. So again, this is like more of like for dueling, but why this is significant and strange is because pirates almost never used those swords.
Really?
Pirates always used cutlasses.
Oh, yeah.
Cutlasses are the more traditional one. Now, this is another geeky, nerdy thing, and I just noticed this today because I was sorting my Disney Lorcana cards. But check this out. In this image, you have Captain Hook, where he's replaced his hook with a cutlass. So why the artist decided to use a cutlass on this, but yet in the actual film itself, they use a rapier, I'm not sure. It's an interesting artistical decision, but I thought that was, I don't know, it was different.
So it's in the film as well? He has that? So he never has a cutlass?
I don't think so.
Huh.
I don't think he ever has a cutlass. So, yeah, I'll have to look.
A rapier would be better for just like fencing, just like, like play swords, not really doing any damage. But maybe it's just me. I don't know that much about them.
Agreed. I would assume that it was more for like practice than actual standard trying to attack, because it's not like those blades were like, it's not serrated, but and this is definitely a facsimile and a cheap one,
right?
But I can't imagine that they were like extremely sharp by any stretch,
I mean, maybe that's part of the storytelling for Captain Hook, is that he doesn't really fight his own battles very much. He's kind of a dandy.
He's just like trying to pretend that he is that.
Yeah. He's like, I can do this, really, but he really is not very skilled at it. That's an interesting idea.
Agreed. Now, I want to go back to our feather in our cap talk, and this time talk about Peter Pan's hat. Because I would be remiss if I didn't tell you all of the fun facts and history surrounding his style of hat, which is known as a bicocket, or often most people would think about this hat with Robin Hood. Because Robin Hood had a very similar style hat as well. It was although I love how he has the arrow in this. I loved that film when I was a kid.
I do too. So,
fun fact about these hats: they were popular from 13th to 16th century. They had a very wide brim that was turned up and pointed like a bird's beak, which is why in France they were called chapeau à bec, or hat with a bill, which makes me very happy. And then I see some more different style ones. Now, this is kind of interesting that these bicocket style hats have no feathers, and yet they're holding birds. So you would imagine that, like, why wouldn't they have that? You know? But here is an example of a hunting party that once they had captured, or the first person to have caught a woodcock would have put a feather in their cap for their accomplishment. But again, in Disney cinema, this is not the first time that we actually see a famous character like Robin Hood, precursor Peter Pan. But the very first one in any of the shorts is actually Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is going to wear and I believe it's 1933
Yeah.
in a short that is titled "In Ye Olden Days," and he, by sure, has a bicocket with a feather in his cap.
Look at him go. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's fun. I love that.
Hat with bills and birds.
Hat with
and
bills.
things.
All right. So the next thing that we see is we're going to go past the bow of the ship and we're going to do a turn. And in here in Park Lore's layout, it's labeled as Indians. I just want to mention that we're just using the historically accurate name here. We know that, in modern times we would call them something else, but we are talking history, so we're going to call it what they called it back in the day. So this would be the Indian Village. And here's the description from 1981. It said, breaking through the clouds, guests see the island of Neverland, because remember, this was supposed to be in the Neverland flyover section. It says, up ahead is the mountaintop home of Princess Tiger Lily's tribe. She, along with her father, the high chief, are holding a tribal council meeting around a blazing campfire. And it says, as the fog slowly clears. Oh, you know what? It says as the fog slowly clears. So that probably does say that it's kind of like that fog curtain was probably there. As the fog slowly clears, a tiny island can be glimpsed. It leads to one main island, which appears to be a series of odd-shaped peninsulas and hills, and a regular path leads up to a plateau, which is dotted with brightly painted Indian teepees. This scene serves to introduce Princess Tiger Lily, her father, the high chieftain of the Indian tribe, and a close friend of Peter Pan and various members of the camp. So they list it as having one chief sitting with arms crossed for the animatronic figures, one boy squaw, which we know that terminology is not something we'd use today, but it's interesting that they use that term for a boy because it usually was only referred to Native American women. So that's interesting enough in itself. One little tiger lily, one papoose, and 3 Indian braves was what they had described to have in that scene. But you can see here on the wall, there's a big moon over the water that's painted on the wall. And then there's a mural that kind of goes off into the distance of the Indian camp up on the hill as is depicted in the movie from Mary Blair's concept art. Then we go to the camp itself. And this is what it looked like in 1983, very, very similar to what we currently have today. And I have some really interesting things about, Disneyland's history with the Indian Village in another part of Disneyland. But before I do that, Kirk, do you have anything you would like to talk about this scene in particular?
Yeah. So, I mean, this mirrors, and when they update it, it gets a new paint, and that looks more like the actual animation, because this early 80s version, they're not painted similarly. They're more in like a greenish color than the standard animation cell. These are stereotypes. It's in Peter Pan, the entire Indian camp scene is just stereotype after stereotype. They call, there's certain language that they use, and all of the experiences that the indigenous tribe is going through are not really apropos or politically correct, especially in today. So what happened in Walt Disney World is they made a big update and change. You can see in this old scene here, very similar to what still exists. It has not been removed, although it was rumored that it was going to get a changeover in Disneyland. That just has never occurred yet. But you can see on the bottom, this changeover was 2 years ago in Walt Disney World, where the tribe became a lot more authentically representative, because in the film, the native people are in a stereotypical manner that reflect neither the diversity of native peoples nor their authentic cultural traditions. That's why they decide to remove this. And in fact, I believe sometimes, like when you watch certain Disney films, they put a precursor, if they haven't edited out scenes, that, hey, listen, there's certain things like smoking or certain things like the portrayal of Native Americans that is inappropriate, because Peter and the Lost Boys basically dress up and are mocking the Indians throughout this whole entire scene. So I can see why they changed it. So yeah, there's definitely things that are in there that were acceptable in the 1950s that wouldn't be to our 2026 lens as something we would consider acceptable. But that, I think that's correct. It's important that we still talk about it because it's still historically relevant,
But I do love that they change even like the symbols that are on the teepees and whatnot to something that would be more culturally relevant to those peoples. I think that's great.
Now, one thing to note from the 80s in Disneyland versus the 2015 is animation does come to the tribe, and the chief does move back to back, and the drummer is drumming as well. So
yeah, well, I think that the drummers always individually have moved their hands, but they move them all, at least in Disney World, they move them all around one big drum, which I think would be more in keeping with the culture of the people.
Yeah.
Versus the individual ones. This is always a really difficult thing to talk about in general, just because we know of, like how things were versus how things are now and whatnot. But we thought it was important to show. And I know Disneyland is slated for an update to this scene, but they have not received it yet because it is still this traditional scene from 1983 from what we see. That being said, I do want to talk a little bit about something that used to be in Disneyland, which was Disneyland's Indian Village, which was opened from 1955 to 1971. It's not something we really talked about too much on in Distory, and honestly, we probably could do an entire episode about this. This was so highly intricate and really fascinating part of Disneyland. I know my mom went to Disneyland in 1956, and she said this was one of her most memorable things that she experienced there, and it really made her fall in love with exploring all these different cultures, which I think is really interesting. So what we're seeing here is the ceremonial dance circle. But in Disneyland's Holiday magazine in 1957, they described it as one of the founding principles upon which Disneyland was designed was the preservation of American heritage. This principle may be seen in many of the free shows and exhibits in each of Disneyland's realms. And one of the most popular among many free performances is the preservation of Indian traditions and customs in Frontierland's Indian Village. Built on the banks of the rivers of America, the Plains Indian settlement is authentic in every detail. Animal hide teepees, a birch bark longhouse, spears, and other implements, and especially the population of real Indians, take visitors into a world which has disappeared from the American scene. Highlight of a visit to the village is the performance of ceremonial dances by the representatives of 16 tribes. So Walt Disney was an enthusiastic supporter of educating about cultures around the world. We know that from the history. We know that from the, Christmas in Many Lands parade and all those kinds of things. He really wanted to emphasize and educate about other cultures, and this was an extension of that. Remember that his wife Lillian actually grew up in Lapwai on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation, which is where her father, Willard P. Bounds, worked as a blacksmith and federal marshal, which is why this is a picture of early Frontierland. We see Willard P. Bounds, blacksmith and U.S. Marshal, listed up there next to the miniature horse corral. He really wanted the village to be authentic, and to the point where you can see Sam McKim's concept artwork. It showed at the top there, you can see some scalps hanging from spears or from the top of the teepee. And Walt insisted that those be removed because he felt they were not an accurate representation. So he was very concerned with making sure that these peoples were represented in a very, very authentic way and not just stereotyped and whatnot, like I guess we would see in Peter Pan. He really did want them to be authentically represented. So some could make the case that, this whole area was exploitative. I could understand that, and especially looking at it from our lens and all those kinds of things. However, the tribal people that were employed at Disneyland were some of the highest paid people in the park at the time. They made $35 per day in the late 1950s, which is really high. It says in 1957, the Soviet press reported that Frontierland was holding Indians in captivity to amuse capitalist visitors. But Chief Riley Sunrise retorted, "Captivity my eye, how many Russians make $125 a week?" They were very highly paid people.
Yeah.
They displayed traditions and dances of 16 different American Indian tribes, including Apache, Comanche, Hopi, Navajo, and Pawnee. And the ambassadors of their nations took pride in representing their culture and sharing it with millions of visitors. So I'm just showing you here some examples of the teepees and the longhouses, which were all made by people who were from those tribes. So they were all authentically created. they had people come in and do demonstrations of their crafts as well. So you can see somebody weaving here in the traditional form. This guy is Truman Washington Daly, who's the last native speaker. I might totally butcher the names of this, and I'm so sorry if I do, but it says he's the last native speaker of the Oto Missouri dialect of Chiweri, which is a Native American dialect. And since Daly's tribal name was Sungehika, which is White Horse, he was known as Chief White Horse when he worked at Disneyland. So you can see lots of people did kind of like a photo opportunity with him because they wanted to meet him. When the Indian village closed in 1971, he returned to Oklahoma, where he taught the Oto Missouri language in tribal classes and was also a consultant for the University of Missouri National Language Project in order to record that language for posterity. He was the last elder to be able to explain the reasons and meanings behind the rituals during tribal gatherings and ceremonials of the tribe. So while you might say it's exploitative, that is, obviously an opinion that people are welcome to hold. But I will say, this man's, language, his culture that was essentially dying out, he got to share with millions of people that made it through Disneyland. And so I think that there's something to be said for that that Walt's love of and desire to share these cultures with people and make Disneyland a place of education, not just a place of fun, and make it fun as well in the meantime. But people really got to experience these cultures in a way where they could meet the people and learn from them. And they were authentically the members of these tribes. They were not just like random people they dressed up in costume, And so their outfits were not supplied by the Disneyland costume department at all. So this is not something Disneyland manufactured, but rather they brought their own authentic costumes from home that were often made by themselves, family members, or others skilled in the craft. And they were the only employees that were permitted to wear moccasins during their shift. So they did accommodate for their culture as well. Again, we could do an entire episode on this Indian village area. It has such a fascinating history. But I do want to mention that you'll see in these pictures, there's lots and lots of totem poles that were made for the area. And when this area closed in 1971, well, what did they do with all these totem poles? Well, they did take them out and then they put them backstage for a little while. So you can see a backstage photo of them. And they're all just kind of stacked up against the building. But they repainted them and then they put them in Walt Disney World around the rivers of America. And so you can see, so you can see in this previous photo, especially, I like to look at the one that has is a big red, curved kind of sides to a rectangular head. And it's very easy to see how they repainted that one and put it here. And the coolest thing is, unless they removed it with the new Big Thunder Mountain remodel, which is possible, but they still exist. A few of them still exist in Walt Disney World over near Big Thunder. So these are
I'll
original.
have to take some pictures.
Yeah.
See what I can find.
Yes, please. I would love to see if they are still there or not. But those are original to Disneyland, which I think is pretty cool.
There's at least 3 that I could think of where one of the old Mike Fink keelboat ports is, where I know there's at least 3. I just don't know what they look like. But now that I have some photos, I can go back and check. Also, I did a inflationary look into the pay. So 1955, $35 a day would be equivalent to $425 in today's 2026 dollars.
For $425 a day. That's pretty good.
Which I'm not gonna lie, if you want to exploit me for $425,
I'll do it.
hit me up.
I'm all about it. Yeah, that's why. And they were the people. My understanding is that the ambassadors that were there were very excited to be there, to be selected to do it. It was a high honor for them to get to go share their culture in such a place where then they got to interact with all these people and share the dances.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have had as much of an audience, to be able to share their stories and their language and their culture. So
right. We ready to head to the stern, Kirk?
Let's go to it.
In 1983, I know he said, all aboard, think we're sailing for London. That's what Peter said. And that there was some limited animation with him turning the wheel back and forth. But this is what it looked like back then, the original version. I will say it's interesting that there are no pirates passed out. There was no pirate battle here. So there's no, Disney World's version has pirates that have clearly been taken out.
Yeah, they've been strewn about on the ground, knocked out, etc.
Yeah. And so now there is no pirates. The only thing we have is there's this book, and you can kind of see it in the bottom right corner here. It says crew list, and then it has the names of some crew members that have been crossed out. So instead of like putting the actual pirates in, they just put a book with their names crossed out. Just kind of lame, not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
This shows you what they look like in Walt Disney World, with the pirates kind of passed out all over the ship. So in comparison, you can see that, and then you can see Disneyland that doesn't have any of that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out, Kirk, is how Peter is holding this wheel is so weird to me. There's two things that are weird about this scene. One is his fingers, kind of like his fingertips are holding the wheel. It's very dainty.
This is how I hold my pen.
And the other thing that I don't understand about Peter Pan is, why are his ears pointy like a pixie?
I don't know.
I never noticed that.
Isn't he kind of very something?
I didn't think he was. I thought he was a boy who went to Neverland, right? Isn't that the storytelling?
I don't know. I think in the book it wasn't like that. I think the book he was of different origin, because there were all fairies in the garden.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing a piece of the story there. That's a possibility. But I never realized his ears were pointy until this picture. I was like, wait a minute. I always thought he was a boy who didn't want to grow up.
J.M. Barrie called him betwixt and between. So he wasn't fully human, but not quite a fairy or a bird. So I don't know. I would say that, maybe that's fair.
Yeah, I guess that explains it. He's between them. So he's...
But I mean, you remember in the first book, Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, he's depicted as a child who escaped from a baby carriage to live with fairies, but he was just a boy.
Right. Well, and that's I feel like that's how he's always been depicted, is in Hook and whatnot. He was a human who then went to Neverland.
But I mean, he has, in the actual film itself, he's got pointy ears.
He sure does. How come I didn't notice that somehow?
Maybe because his hair is pretty shaggy, but most of the time it's not covered.
Yeah. Huh. So maybe he's part fairy-ish, sort of, kind of. Interesting.
Maybe.
And then the other thing is, they didn't have any pixie dust sprinkling the ship until 2015. They added that new effect in, where then it looks like Tink is literally sprinkling the ship with pixie dust, which is projected onto it, which is a beautiful effect. And they don't have that in Disney World. But then we see Tinkerbell is up there with her, I'm guessing this is fiber optic wand, Kirk. Is that correct?
It is, and it's amazing. She looks like a kid with one of those little wands.
And her wings light up too, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my favorite picture, oh yeah, there she is. So there's her little fiber optic wand. And I like this one in particular, where she's this is a Daveland photo, so credit to them, but she's peeking over the lamp. The next part here, as we near the end, is listed in our layout as Hook and Crocodile. But I like Imagineering's name for it in 1981, because they call it Captain Hook's Ordeal, which
is one.
Is how I'm going to refer to it now. Yeah, Captain Hook's Ordeal. It says, with his ship lost to Peter Pan, Captain Hook tries to make good his escape, but is foiled by the crocodile, who has other plans in mind. Mr. Smee is rowing frantically to rescue his captain, but it may prove to be too late, as Hook balances precariously between the jaws. The set description is, Mr. Smee sits in a set piece dinghy rowing toward Captain Hook, precariously situated between the jaws of a hungry crocodile. The right side of the set will be rock work. And this scene serves as a humorous epilogue to the pirate ship adventure. So this is what we see as we fly into this area with Captain Hook balanced precariously on the jaws. But you know what's so interesting, Kirk, is if you look at this really close up, there's something really messed up with his shoes and the jaw. It's actually a little disturbing.
Oh, his foot goes through the whole jaw, the jaw is not connected. It's not like he's standing on the jaw, he's through the jaw. The jaw is disconnected.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. And there's now animation with TikTok Croc. He actually opens and closes his mouth.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
So he does have his hat also flying off of his head, which I think is interesting. And then, but in Disney World, you can see his hat was in the water instead. So that's a little difference between, they did pull this from Disney World, but they made it in the water instead. It's interesting to me is that if you remember the 1955 version, it just ends with like Smee shooting at us and Captain Hook like stabbing at us, and then we fly through a waterfall and like it's over, right? So it's interesting that they really changed the storytelling of this attraction to be, you know, we're the ship is getting pixie dust and you know, and then Smee and Hook are getting their due, you know, for their misdeeds. So I think I like that they changed it more of like a happy ending versus we end in peril. And somebody pointed out to me that all of the original Fantasyland attractions all ended in peril in 1955. So the giant boulder that is pouring on us in Snow White, and this one was Smee and Captain Hook trying to get us, and then in Mr. Toad, it was us ending up in the hot place, right? So there was like really no like happy endings in the 1955 version. It all ended with like scary things. And then they fixed some of those, not all of them, but they fixed some of those later on. It's just really interesting to me that I've always thought of us overcoming things in Disney attractions that make us feel like a hero, but it wasn't necessarily always that way. We did escape. We always escaped all those things.
Consequences, kids. Consequences.
So then this is the picture of Smee in the work copy from Imagineering, and his boat's actually pointed in the other direction. I think this is how it is in Walt Disney World, as the bow of the ship is behind him. But in Disneyland, it's in front of him instead, with a little lamp on it and a crate behind his back. But he's rowing away, and he's also, you know, trying to rescue Captain Hook and all those things. So this is what the scene looks like when it's illuminated, so you can see all that rock work that they were talking about. And there's actually a staircase that's behind him as well to the left. Blink and you miss it when you're on this attraction, but there is a throwback to 1955 because you were supposed to go through a waterfall right at the end of the attraction. Well, there's a projection of water on the doors before it opens up to the next scene. And I only recently noticed that was there. And I'm like, oh, that's supposed to be the waterfall that we're going through, which I had never put two and two together until that point. Because if you see, we're going past Smee and then we're headed into the Mermaid Lagoon. So we're literally going through these doors of what's supposed to be like we're crashing through a waterfall or splashing through a waterfall to get to the Mermaid Lagoon, which I think is really interesting. And so that's where we're heading next. This is the 1981 version, which again was supposed to be back in Neverland. So it says, leading the Lost Boys treehouse camp behind, the vibrantly beautiful Mermaid Lagoon comes into view. Lazily perched atop the exotic rockwork surrounding the shoreline, the enchanting lovelies primp and fawn with hand mirrors and combs. The set pieces depict a rocky shoreline, the tropical island, and one low waterfall. And this scene displays one of the more tranquil landscapes found in Neverland. So at this point, they were going to have 5 mermaids. We only got 3. They were supposed to have one with a mirror, one with a lyre, one with a starfish, one under a waterfall, and one resting on a rock. But we only have 3, one with a lyre, one with a compact that she's using like a seashell, and then one that's just kind of resting on a rock. And there are some topless mermaids in this scene in 1983.
Yeah, a little bit.
They're obscured though, so she's got like a lei on, and the other one is facing backwards, so you can't really tell. And then the other one does have like starfish covering up all the things, or seashells. I can't tell from this picture, but there's things covering up these mermaids. It's been a thing in this series. And then the audio is supposed to be the mermaids humming, for what it's worth, in 1981. But we do have also the golden ship kind of flying away with pixie dust, which in Disney World, we only have like a flat painted one, right? That's like a glow in the dark one.
It's a lot cooler here.
Yeah, here it's like a 3D, at least a half 3D ship that's flying up above. And then they added pixie dust to it to make it illuminated as well. And so I love the scene that they also added that projected water, Kirk, to make the waterfalls kind of more animated. It's just a beautiful scene, but it's really hard to see for its staging. It happens really quickly on the left, and then you're just like unloading. So you have to you're turning as you go through to the right, and then it's a snap to the left again. Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, it goes by really, really fast. So there's also a secondary waterfall that's back into the left, but you might not see it because it goes by so quickly. And then we do see the Lost Boys camp, quote unquote, is technically at the end of this ride, even though it doesn't really look like very much. So this is the 1981 version. Says, in the distance, Tinkerbell's twinkling brightly and flying excited little patterns, which we never got. That was from 1955's version. Because on a plateau of a nearby mountain, a large tree glows with the reflections of a burning campfire. Gathered around the fire are Peter Pan's friends and followers, the Lost Boys, telling stories, laughing, and plotting their next adventure. So it says, as the vehicles enter the Host Boys camp, it says Host Boys camp. I think they meant Lost Boys, and I think it's a typo.
Yeah.
Because they do it multiple times. It says, off in the distance, you see softly twinkling vision of Tinkerbell. The centerpiece of the set is a large glowing tree with the Host Boys sitting around a nearby campfire. I'm like, they did it twice. But they were going to have 6 audio animatronic figures, a fox boy, a bear, a raccoon, a rabbit, a squirrel, and a skunk. And then they would hear laughter and the voice of the Lost, it says Host Boy again, the Lost Boy telling stories. All we ended up getting from this scene, instead of like Walt Disney World's version with the Lost Boys, is all we get is these like 3D sculpted tree of like, it's called the Hagman's tree. It's their hideout. But that's all we see as you go around the corner here, and some like trees painted like on a mural on the wall. And this is honestly the best picture I could get of it, because it is so hard to see as you're flying out of there, you know? So.
Yeah, you see like the big long arm where they would have had a noose, which obviously there is none, and then that's it.
Yep. But interestingly enough, in this 1981 work copy, there was an alternate finale that we never got, Kirk.
Oh, what was it supposed to be?
So it says, as ride vehicles pass by, leaving Captain Hook to his fate, they are showered in a sprinkle of Tink's pixie dust. The vehicles move beside a mirrored wall, and the reflection shows the tiny pirate ships have taken on a golden aura. And then they say how they would do this is a scrim is located in front of the mirrored wall. A star effect will be projected onto the scrim, and guests will see their galleon magically transformed into a ship of gold. So it says, as the finale to the show, special effects seemingly change the ride vehicles from their normal flamboyant pirate colors to a pixie dust coated gold, which I think would have been really cool. And
yeah.
So I tried to create this. Heads up, this is AI created, and it's really obvious that it's AI created. But I tried to create like what this would look like, just to give us an idea of what it would be, and this is the best it could come up with, which is saying a lot. But it is really quite a beautiful idea to watch our ships all get kind of painted in gold, and then we're all flying back to London as well. I just love this idea, and I'm actually kind of bummed that we never got it. So
yeah,
I think it would have been really fun to see that. But I think that lack of space probably is the main reason why we didn't. You know,
that makes sense.
Where in the world would you put that in? You know, there's no time. It's so you'd have to like cancel like Hook and Smee's scene and like put it somewhere in that dark corner over there, because there's just not enough space for this scene in that 1:49 attraction. So, but it does remind me of if you go on Radiator Springs Racers, how they paint the cars when you go into Ramones on that one side of Radiator Springs Racers, and you see your car like change, you know. It reminds me of that a lot. So I also have this image that I'm pretty sure was done by Bruce Bushman. The more I look into it, I think that this was probably back before Disneyland opened. This was one of the early concepts for it, and it just shows another idea for an alternate ending that we never got. And it is the darling children in their nursery waving out the window to the pirate ship floating away, the golden pirate ship floating away. And so I have a feeling that the idea of like watching the pirate ship float away in the distance might have been pulled from this concept. But I mean, again, it's in the film too, so you know, it could be either. But I just think this one's really interesting, and it took me a long time to figure out exactly what this was meant for, and I'm pretty sure it was just Disneyland's original version, and they never ended up using it. So it's just Bruce Bushman. Before we leave Peter Pan's flight in Disneyland, I have to say that I wanted to mention one of my favorite little details in Fantasyland that a lot of people miss is this Peter Pan, PP and WD for Peter Pan and Wendy Darling, and that is carved into a tree. If you're going just past the Snow White fountain on the right side of the castle, there's like some stairs that go up, and then there's a tree. And that's one of the like emergency exit doors, I think, for Peter Pan. Because if you lean near the door, you can actually hear the music from the attraction. But if you have to you have to go up the stairs, and it's okay, they're not blocked off. As long as you don't go anywhere you're not supposed to go, you can go up there and look at it. But you can see on the side of the tree are these initials carved into it, which I think is a really fun little detail. And then the arrow itself points into the attraction itself. Fun little detail to look for in Disneyland. But yeah. So I think that pretty much takes us to the end of the attraction. We made it. For me, Kirk, this is one of the absolute best versions of this. Although when I went on Disneyland Paris, I kind of liked it a little bit more. So we'll have to see that one when we get to it. But do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up this one?
I don't know. I feel like I still would love to see that galleon changeover. I think there's still an opportunity. Dump the tree, add the changeover. Yeah,
I feel like figure it out for Disney World too. Like Disney World needs some love in their attraction. That would be a great upgrade to add to theirs as well.
I feel like we have even less room. It's like
that's probably
ours is
true.
So like there's nothing you can rip out because we end with Hook and Smee and then we're gone. We're out.
Yeah, that's true. So speaking of Walt Disney World, that's where we're going to head next because we have to talk about the queue expansion and all the additions that they made and improvements that they made to the attraction when they did that. So that's where we're going to head next before we head to Paris. But thank you all for being with us for this journey through 1983 Disneyland Peter Pan's Flight. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Distory.